Okay, comrades, can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, comrades. Well, look, how can we recover? What next for the Labour left? The first question, where are we now? And the answer is we are in opposition. In opposition, firstly, of course, to this right-wing government, a government, in Johnson's famous words, based on capitalism and greed, which has put profit before the health of our people, achieved one of the highest rates of COVID deaths in the world, and which is preparing to ensure that the massive costs of the pandemic are paid for by the working class, the poor, the dispossessed. Now, there is, of course, a movement of resistance within the trade unions with climate change protests, the Black Lives Matter movement, and as those of us who were there on Saturday in London will testify, in the movement of solidarity with the Palestinian people. That demonstration was vibrant, young, diverse, united, humorous, and angry. And it is from these movements from which the mass base for resistance will develop. How desperately we need a Labour Party to try to connect these struggles and to provide a political, governmental alternative. But that Labour Party no longer exists, or rather exists at the grassroots, but certainly not in the leadership. For we are in opposition too within the Labour Party. At the 2019 general election, with the toppling of Corbyn and the election of Starmer as Labour leader, the left has suffered a serious defeat. We've been pushed to the margins, suspended and expelled, pushed out for telling the truth about the exclusion of Jeremy Corbyn, on anti-Semitism in the party, on the report of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. Even talking about the witch hunt can get you witch hunted. But the attack on the left goes way beyond the attacks on free speech. These are just a symptom of a greater malaise in the leadership of our party, its invisibility, its timidity, failure to oppose the Sky Cops bill, the sacking of Rebecca Long Bailey on trumped-up charges of supporting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And it is in the attacks on Black Lives Matter as a moment, not a movement. It's shrouding itself in the Union Jack. It's running away from the Green New Deal and the more radical parts of Corbyn's manifesto. And we've seen all too clearly the electoral consequences in Hartlepool, in Scotland, and in many areas, though not all, areas of England with a party membership often demoralised and demobilised. Starmer may have illusions he can do without the membership. He may think that with friends in the establishment and in the press, he has no need to take account of party members who have ideas of our own. It is a cruel delusion. Attacking party activists is the surest way to lose elections. The results are there for us all to see. Labour has returned to being a safe pair of hands for the establishment. Behind the right wing stands the ruling class in this country, determined to reassert its control over our party. The Corbyn movement came as a terrible shock to them, and they are determined never to allow that to happen again. This explains the leadership's ferocity. Their removal of Corbyn from the PLP was part of a strategy to demoralise and crush our movement. The wholesale suspensions are a continuation of this. It is a scorched earth policy. Whatever it may cost in electoral terms, it is for the right wing, a price worth paying. But the basis for our opposition, our resistance, already exists in embryo. Within the party, what is remarkable is how party members and constituency Labour parties have resisted without leadership from the top. In so many parties, we have said, no, we do not accept your diktat. We will tell the truth. There are at least 80 CLPs which have defied the instruction to be silent. 160 secretaries and chairs of 235 CLPs who have written a letter of protest to the General Secretary-elect. Now, comrades are leaving the party in tens of thousands. It says much for our resilience that it is not more. But tens of thousands will become hundreds of thousands unless there is a fight back. The key is to be resisting, above all to be visible. The time for keeping our heads down has gone. Now, there have been many proposals from the left, and there are problems with all of them. Hold the line till 2024, when Starmer may stand down. But if there was any prospect of a left candidate challenging for leadership, Starmer would be pressed to remain. Under no circumstances would the ruling class risk the election of another left-wing Labour leader. Some comrades have raised the idea of blocking the appointment of the current acting General Secretary. We'd all support that, but even if the left won that against the odds, the General Secretary would be forced to carry out the instructions of a right-wing NEC. It is suggested that there should be the immediate removal of the leader and the election of a left leader with the determination to mobilise the membership against the right. Is it possible? Well, it's going to be difficult given the current rules. To challenge Starmer, you would need to get the support of 20% of the PLP, about 40 MPs. There are 34 members of the Socialist Campaign Group, some of whom, it must be said, are utterly useless. Almost impossible to get the required number. The right generously, stupidly gave Corbyn the nomination in 2015 to allow the semblance of a contest. It is an error they will never willingly repeat. Fight at conference by all means, but will conference even happen? With the right's iron grip on the party, our room for manoeuvre is limited. But remember this, despite the hemorrhaging of members, the left probably still has a majority supporting the mass membership. This balance of forces will not last forever. So we need to act quickly. The longer we leave it, the less chance of success. Another task, another possibility is the argument for a conference of the Labour left. No panacea this, but it could be a key way of keeping our resistance visible. Let's see if we can get it off the ground. Now, none of these options are easy, none impossible, but none easy. But organisations of resistance are springing up all over the place. And what is our task? It is to embrace them all, help unite them, connect and unite from the bottom, link up with the left of the NEC, the trade unions and beyond, and build alliances. The left, the Labour left, must break out of our isolation, link the different wings of our movement together, and above all, focus on building the resistance on the ground. And that means often outside the formal structures of the Labour Party. And I think this is one of the key lessons for us. Where Labour acted as a Labour Party and resisted the Tories, the electoral results were quite positive. In Wales, in Preston, Manchester, even West Sussex. See this issue of Labour briefing for local reports. And in East Sussex too, in Peacehaven of all places, they elected Labour councillors onto East Sussex County Council for the first time ever, I believe, because there was a major campaign against the academies, and the local party was centrally involved in this struggle. So we need to assess the lessons of the Corbyn years and try to ensure that what mistakes were made are not repeated. In those years, we were fighting the establishment, external and inside the party too, above all in the PLP and in the national and regional bureaucracies. And it was obvious from the outset that the parliamentary party and the Labour Party bureaucracy would be serious obstacles to any programme of fundamental change. I go further. A precondition for challenging the forces of the establishment from outside was to take on the forces of the establishment within our party. It was inconceivable that the parliamentary party, unless fundamentally transformed, could ever be an ally in the struggle for transformation. Now, the only way to have fought against such powerful opposition forces was to build an anti-establishment insurgency from below, beginning with an early shakeout of the party bureaucracy, removing McNichol as General Secretary. But the problem that we faced then was that this was not the late 60s, the 70s, the early 80s, when the working class was powerful. So powerful that in 1974 election, he called the election on the theme of who rules, the government or the unions, and he lost. We have suffered decades of defeat since the miners' strike, although Jeremy's victory reflected in part a genuine disaffection from below against austerity and neoliberalism, part of an international movement, such as in Spain, Greece, the United States. At the same time, our movement was at a low ebb. And this was the key contradiction between the rise of the most left-wing leadership in Labour's history and the low ebb of class struggle. Our task was, and it is, to rebuild our movement. It needed a democratic grassroots movement rooted in our trade unions and communities that would have to try openly and transparently to transform the party itself. That insurgency had to be a radical crusade against the establishment and an authentic voice for the dispossessed. But here was the conflict for our leaders of the left: how to achieve that, while at the same time achieving some unity within the PLP and shadow cabinet sufficient to keep the parliamentary opposition on the road. There were two aims: party unity and the building of a radical democratic grassroots movement. How could those opposites be reconciled? And that was the nub of the problem. And that tension, exacerbated, in my opinion, by the political degeneration and incorporation of momentum, had now reached a critical point. After the split by the Gang of Nine, Jeremy had almost impossible choices. He feared another parliamentary split that could make a general election victory, even against what was then a weak split, crisis-ridden Tory government. It could have made it desperately difficult. And yet to abandon the radical grassroots movement to the power of the parliamentary party was to give up in advance on the chance of a lifetime of achieving a radical socialist Labour government. Now, under Jeremy, the party became a mass membership party of 600,000 plus, the biggest party in Western Europe. But ultimately, the left, that's we, failed to deliver. Why? Above all, it was a political weakness and a failure to give political leadership. Against huge establishment pressure, above all from the PLP and the bureaucracy, the left began to divide and crumble on such fundamental issues as fighting the witch hunt and on open selection of MPs. Key allies of the left, key objectives to transform the party, were sacrificed in a vain attempt to appease the right. And sections of the left at various times colluded with and appeased the witch hunt. A witch hunt primarily based on mainly false, certainly exaggerated allegations of anti-Semitism, allegations which we failed to challenge and which I, as a socialist Jew, found and find deeply offensive. So what is my conclusion? My view is that the left has suffered a severe defeat. In the short run, there is little immediate prospect of victory within the party. So how can we recover? One, by being visible as a Labour left, for otherwise there will be an ever greater exodus by the left from the Labour Party. Two, building our forces by connecting to class struggle, often outside of the party, building the strength of the movements of resistance, above all in the trade unions, but beyond, and to try to give this movement a political expression as conditions permit within the party. We must try to coordinate the various movements of resistance inside the party, of course, but outside, beyond the party as well. Because this is a fight that will not be won just within the CLPs. It is only by helping to renew the forces of class struggle, connecting to these forces as a visible Labour left, that we can ever succeed in fighting back in the party itself. The contradiction for us is that while we need to build alliances and be patient, the planet is teetering towards extinction, and we do not have all the time in the world. Comrades, the dangers engulfing us are terrifying and worldwide. None of the countless millions suffering from forest fires, floods, pandemics across the planet will be inspired by a Labour leadership which waves its tainted and reactionary national flag. Our flag is international. We are part of a global movement of resistance. It is a fight within the Labour Party, but it is much, much more than this. We have a world to save. Thank you, comrades.